Good to know. We should be efficient.
I assume it would be.
It is noon. We can call this meeting to order. We're taking, we're recording and you've taken who's here? Yes. Okay. I would entertain a motion to approve the agenda.
Madam Chair, I move to approve the agenda.
Is there anyone, I don't see anyone online, but am I missing anyone that would like, from the public that would like to make comments? Seeing in here. I entertain a motion to approve the minutes of the November 1st.
Madam Chair, I reviewed the minutes, so I move to approve them.
Okay, we're whipping through this for you now. I got my marching orders. All right. Let's start with all business, the ED renovation.
So I don't really have any updates on the ED renovation project. I did draft an email to Emily Region to receive a response. We do have a face-to-face meeting on strategic planning of the state and the city next week. So our opportunity to discuss this.
Could you speak a little, just in case? Let's see both then. That you told. Okay. 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 All right. Ms. Wren, you're up.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I just wanted to note, I don't know if the other people on Zoom are having, or Teams are having the same issue. The sound quality is a bit garbled, so I'm not catching quite what everything says, everyone is saying, but I will move forward. So the project updates are up in front of you. I submitted those in November, and there's a few more updates that have occurred on the CT scanner MRI issues. The flooring repair work is complete, and a solution is underway to address the HVAC controls in the radiologist reading room. So things are wrapping up on that project. The ground floor asbestos abatement, and our last update, the contract completion date is April 14th. Far North abatement has started on site for the ground floor asbestos abatement project, and they're making really good progress. They estimate that they're going to be done by the end of December. So we'll wait and see if that comes true, but they are making good progress. So I think they're going to be done well ahead of the April date. A recent development on the ED addition and renovation, and I'm not sure if Joe mentioned it. I don't think so. We just got word from HRSA, that's the organization that we have the federal grant from, that they've reviewed our preliminary information, and we do not have to do anything further for an environmental or historical preservation review. So that is good news. That will help this project schedule and budget. The Wildflower Court life safety condition assessment. We got the assessment report back with cost estimates with various recommendations, and the design group decided to finalize full replacement of the fire alarm system, estimated cost of $400,000 for the facility. So let's see, the Wildflower Court fuel tank installation, that's moving forward. The bid has been advertised, and the bids are scheduled to open on January 9th. And the Wildflower Court sidewalk replacement project. We're just waiting for final plans and specs. Are there any questions?
When's just out of curiosity, when are we estimating get started with the Wildflower Court sidewalk replacement?
I don't know for sure. I'll have to get back to you, but my assumption that will be a spring project, given that it's site work.
Yeah. And the same with the fuel tank installation? Is it,
Yeah,
pardon?
It won't be weather contingent,
Okay,
where the sidewalks will be.
thank you.
you're
Are
welcome.
there any questions? All righty. Thank you, Ms. Wren.
You're welcome.
Moving on to C, options and priorities for the use of the Aurora Behavioral Health Center.
Thank you. So we've been working on this project quite a while. We actually went down a few different paths trying to evaluate the best use of the space.
Ms. Wren, can you hear?
Yes, I can.
Thank you.
Rod, not.
It's still a little garbled, but I'm getting most of it. I'll read the minutes.
So as we kind of evaluated the current needs of the hospital, we kind of centered on moving PT out of the hospital space over to the third floor. That's how we started looking at this. As we went down that path, Mark walked through the space with Hallie. It became apparent if we made that move, we'd already be at max capacity to start. We'd use up all the space on the floor just to get our PT department, if we could get it all in there as is. There were also other considerations with that. If we move them out of there, the goal was to expand infusion therapy into the space currently occupied by physical therapy. There would be additional project costs with that as well. Kind of unknown at this point. It is an older part of the building. We'd have to add new hoods to expand infusion, which would come with it more additional costs. Just moving PT or renovating the third floor for PT use had an estimated cost of just over $1 million, $3,000. That just does the PT side. That would be it. We'd max out the space. We'd have a bunch of construction to expand infusion. So after looking at that, we started looking at what would happen if we moved infusion over to that space and the costs associated with that. There are additional considerations with that as well. So to expand infusion effectively, we need to add hoods to the space we were in today. And so regardless of space, we're at our max capacity at our hood volumes as well. So when we started looking at the project for the third floor, we took into consideration that we'd add two hazardous material hood and then two red hoods, right? We'd also have additional space, more than double the current square footage we have today for infusion. And then being on the top floor, the construction cost for adding the hood would be less than it would be to expand it in the current space. Does that make sense to everybody? And so with that, the estimated cost for the third floor conversion for infusion was at $890,000. So the city and Borough of Juneau's engineering department did most of the groundwork. We've added some additional contingencies on that based on Mark's experience renovation of space. So our estimates are slightly different from the city pilot. There are additional operational considerations with moving infusion over into that space. We have labs that are drawing data of infusions to make sure the patients can actually have the infusion that day. So we'd have to figure out how we get the labs drawn and either ran over to the hospital or do we add testing equipment to space. If there is adverse outcomes with the patient, how does that patient take care of in this space? We talked through this with both the director of infusion therapy and the pharmacy that does the infusion. I felt they felt comfortable kind of moving into this space with some of the plans we had in place. But with that, I mean, there's a lot of moving pieces with both these projects when we start shuffling stuff around because as you move the space over there, this one becomes available. What do we move into that space? So after a meeting with Deb that we just had, I think what we're gonna look at doing is moving this to a future planning meeting with starting discussions around our facility master's plan and how this works into that. It's how we've kind of built space and moved into space and enclosed services. I want to make sure when we start making some of these moves, we have a solid plan for how stuff shuffles around and we're not moving stuff and not gonna be there for a long time. That makes sense. Anything else?
I have a couple of comments and questions, but any questions from the committee members or board members?
I just appreciate that you're.
And then I assume the master plan will be the rainforest center, and what are we doing with Bob's, and what's the time frame for the master plan discussion?
So we just started this. I mean, those of you who have been around a while have probably heard me say we need to refresh our facilities master plan and tie it to the strategic plan. We've been talking about that for several years, I think. And now is the best time. Well, there's always a good time. We could have started it earlier, but now is, I guess, a kind of a critical time to make that happen. A lot has changed since the current facilities master plan was put together. So that being said, at the next meeting, we're going to at the next planning committee meeting, I would like to start that process. And this would be one of the first projects, what we do with Aurora Behavioral Health. And it sounds like the most beneficial project to move into Aurora Behavioral Health at this point would be infusion, correct? So we would start that process with this particular project of taking a look at this project through the lens of our existing strategic plan. And then the next step would be taking a look at everything else that's on the facilities master plan, checking for relevance. I'd like to see, I would like to see a copy of the current the current facilities master plan be distributed to the committee members for sure, but maybe through the committee, but all board members have a chance to take a look at it. And so we can start the process of what's still relevant, what are our, what needs to change or be added based on our current strategic plan. That makes sense. So we weren't prepared. We started this conversation just, 45 minutes ago.
We got this yesterday, so this is fresh in our hands.
So at the next planning committee, I'd like to have the conversation about how we move forward with that update, and then begin the hard work. One of the recommendations that I'm making once we determine what we'd like to see in a facilities master plan is to engage a consultant to assess our existing spaces. My experience, and certainly our engineering and public works folks can assist us with this, but do a space analysis of what is best practice for the size of the amount of space we need for specific programs. In my experience, The consultant went through all of the spaces available at the university, and this was a university, but the concept is the same. That take a look at how much you need for each program, how much space you need for each program, where you have excess space for a program, where you are short on space for a program, and all the other factors as you were mentioning. I believe you mentioned if we move infusion therapy, labs becomes an issue. Do we have to have a runner? Do we have a small lab space there? What happens if there's a code? All of those things, and those are things that a consultant could help with, unless we have the expertise. But that's kind of a longer term as we move forward with updating the facilities master plan. Does anybody know when the date of the last facilities master plan was?
Oh, that's kind of a rolling date.
Madam Chair, I think the most recent one was 2021, I'm gonna say, Mark, with JYW, but that was never adopted. And then there was the one prior to that was 2011, and I don't think that one was adopted either.
And the second one, the most recent one was just kind of an update to.
That's what I thought.
So the original happened many years ago. We looked at square footage,
Right.
and needs of each
Mhm.
department, shortages. Basically.
I assumed that had been done for the original, but, okay, thank you, that's good information. Dr. Rector.
My question is, did the original plan have a consultant, or was it done with the senior leadership at the time? And do we have enough expertise, for instance, with Joe and his team to at least come up with some preliminary ideas before we go to a consultant? So I guess that's a two-pronged question. Did we have a consultant initially? Do we have the ability to come up with a rough estimate before we have a consultant?
Yes.
Yes. What we could do is we could take the old plan and start taking our strategic plan as it is today and start tying the two together and start coming up with a plan. That way, if we do engage another consultant, they're not starting from scratch. We have some idea what we're doing as an organization. And they can provide feedback on it. Is that what you're asking?
That's exactly. Thank you.
Yes. Any other questions about the plans for Aurora Behavioral Health and the broader conversation about updating the facilities master plan? Okay. Next. Brown.
So I don't think we have much. Oh, we got the whole vision is here, Joe. I didn't realize we were putting this all up. This is exciting. So at the board meeting last time, I think we only showed the top level. We hadn't shown the kind of deeper throughout the organization version. So you can see here. So I apologize. You can see all of Joe's direct reports. How many direct reports those primarily the chiefs have. So you can see that, as well as any of the significant changes. So you can see that we have the clinics director now reports directly to the CEO. That has been moved around several times. The hospitalists, again, reporting directly to Joe. My position reporting directly to Joe. Information technology, med-staff services. Not a whole lot of changes here. There are a couple of materials going out of general accounting, I think is a change as well. And pretty much the whole plan there. Sorry. What questions y'all have? Sorry, just.
Well, it does look a little out of balance.
Yeah.
There's one individual, whoever hold that position, that I wouldn't want to be. Having been somebody who's supervised a bunch of people before, that's like, well, that's twice as many.
So if you go back to the initial pillars that we put forward, the target is between 7 to 12 direct reports is optimal. So Kim is the only individual that falls a little bit above that. Fortunately, and I do think she has some strong directors in some of those areas that reduce the workload significantly on her. So I would say that there's several folks in there that take a pretty big load off. But yeah, it is definitely not as balanced as we would have hoped. The only other way to achieve that would be by delineating some of these positions a little bit further, which I don't think we're ready to do.
I'm not sure if you delineate. What is
I would say adding another chief would be an option in order to reduce that burden. And I don't think anyone is got the appetite for that at this point, to add additional leadership.
Perhaps Wildflower Court could go straight up to Joe. I mean, that would
That is
almost seem more natural than,
something we consider, but there are reimbursement reasons for putting her.
oh, okay, very good, yeah, especially for critical.
And so like some of the people that are like, Deb will talk to Gail, she'll talk to me. I mean, some of these people will
Yeah,
go
you're,
multiple places. As we,
thank you.
as a team, we will make sure Kim feels supported.
Good.
If I can ask a follow- so in the new system, there's chief, there's nobody like assistant chief.
That's correct. One of the first things we brought to the board's attention was the reduction of the executive director position. So the executive directors at the time consisted of myself, Mr. Rumsey, Mr. Letterman, Ms. Stout, and Ms. Carson. So if you walk down that list, I'm the only one that's still here, and my position was reclassified to director from executive director. So I now fall at the director level.
And so there's, I assume, nine directors under the nursing operations.
A couple of those are managers, but yes, primarily they're directors.
I hate to burn up time here, but can you tell me which of those boxes have directors and which have managers?
Probably easier to tell you which ones have a manager.
Managers, yeah.
So through the chair, our infusion center. Infusion currently has a nurse manager in it. And our PACU, so OR has a manager and a director, because that's big. So there's a manager that manages same day surgery. And then there's currently a manager in our nursing administration role. And then there's a manager for our mental health unit. And we don't really have a director at BOPS. We have an office manager that helps with that. But everybody else in that role is a director.
Chair. I have a question. What happens if Kim is out on a leave?
Win the lottery. Don't say it's budget. And don't say it's the 5 months, winning the lottery.
Wins the lottery and decides to leave. That's all. It's a big chunk. So do you have a plan for that?
Through the chair, I've currently been working with directors on my side to identify those who could be a succession plan and trying to help expose them to certain elements of my role.
And I will say that is one of the, if you look back at the board report, under the HR tab, that's one of the things that we have slotted for this upcoming couple of quarters is to the succession planning throughout the organization at all levels to make sure. And I've had several conversations. I know several of the directors, the director level folks, particularly under Kim, are already grooming people, folks that they hope have potential to take over for them. Because we do have quite a few folks that are within 3 to 5 years of retirement. And so we need to make sure that we're planning ahead for that. And that's why I want to make sure that succession planning stuff happens now.
Thank you. That was going to be my next question, is talking about the succession plan, what's happening with the rest of the organization?
I hope you win the lottery.
Have to play though.
I was just going to say, are you one of those that buys the lottery tickets?
When I fly through Seattle, I always hit the machine.
So any questions? Any more questions?
Questions or comments? Well,
I guess I do have one. Is suppose Kim wins the lottery or something like that, or suppose you discover this just isn't working out. What's the fallback here? I mean, this looks like a dangerous way to proceed.
So one of the challenges that I've seen as I've been here for the past year is that the gap between what I would call kind of our frontline staff and our leadership is really dramatic. So we can say the same, what you're saying about Kim, I think about in CCU or in OB. You have a director and you have nurses, you have charge nurses and nursing folks. There's nothing in between. There's no middle ground for people to meet. And so we see that throughout the organization. And that's something that I want to make sure that we address through the planning is not only do we have the people that we're grooming, but do we have the positions so that we can put them in so that they can be groomed into those greater roles. So an example would be, let's use Med Surg, for example, big department, they have a director and staff. Does that make sense at some point in time to consider putting some sort of a assistant manager or manager in there so that person can develop underneath the director? So if Maggie was doing the lottery, then we'd have someone that would hopefully be able to step into that role.
That's not really my question. In my personal life, sometimes when I'm going to do something that's a little risky, I want to think, okay, how am I going to detect if this isn't working out? And then what am I going to do if it's not working? That's what I'm listening for here. How are you going to detect? How are we going to detect if this just isn't working out? And what is the staff going to do?
I think it's kind of a constant assessment of like the leaders that have all these workload underneath them. I mean, I have daily conversations with Kim to make sure her load's not too much. I mean, as you go through these jobs, it's the old 80-20 rule. 20% of your work or 80% of your work is for 20% of your staff. Right? So I know Gail's got a tremendous load on her too. She might have less direct reports, but there's still a lot that falls on her shoulder. I mean, I think you would say that for everyone that's on that top list. Kim just stands out because she's got so many underneath her. And so we do have contingency plans. If anyone, this is my nightmare is that right? Or again, the checks, it's not that one that next to me. And so we have to think about like, what do I do the next day? So I mean, it's thought about, there's nothing really articulated or written because some of these you just have to be able to be flexible and adapt quickly to the circumstances.
I'm going back in my memory to after the Exxon Valdez oil spill, and there I saw a few individuals given way too much responsibility, and projects were just failing. Things weren't getting done, and nobody was really detecting it. And it was just this kind of problem that just a few individuals had just too much. And I'm thinking, well, that should have been detected, but there was no thought about detecting.
I'll be a countervailing opinion. I have faith that they will detect it. And I think that's a little more lean with less layers of administrators and more people doing the work. And it's probably cheaper. From our fiscal perspective, I suspect that's a little cheaper. And I hear our old CFO, now CEO, nodding his head. So I think it's reasonable to run with the program for now.
Through the chair, I just want to kind of address that. I get your concern, but if you really actually look at this chart, the only thing that's really been added to it from what I had before was 3 other departments who have very strong leaders. That's home care, hospice, wildfire report, and MOPS. I had all these other departments before, even the mental health unit. Because it was majority nursing issues, so I was pretty much had that the whole time, even when Jen Carson was here. And as far as like, we met with the EAs last week, and part of our plan was to make sure that everybody within our purview is working at the height of their talent and their license. And so we do have plans for the new year. If it's a lot of times there's meetings that I just need to get the information from, but I don't necessarily need to be there. And that would be something I would be delegating to one of the EAs to go, and all the chiefs delegating to one of the EAs to go and say, take this meeting for me while I work on this project. So I think we have some safety plans in place. We really do have some really strong directors in these areas, and I have no doubt that I win the lottery. you know, I can look at this chart and think of several directors that would be able to, with some support, slide into my space. The other thing that I'm doing is I'm requiring more of my directors with certain projects, giving them the reins for like virtual nursing. I'm kind of helping, you know, keep the wheels on the bus with that project, but Maggie's taking that on wholeheartedly, meeting with them, setting up all the stuff with IT and all of that. So, and that helps groom them with project management and get that experience for possible succession planning as well.
Through the chair. The other thing that I think you're gonna see from the last year, we haven't shared it with the full board yet, but which is coming in January, is the communication with our frontline staff. And, you know, when we look at teamwork and we look at communication through our organization, the one thing, and I don't know if you've had a chance to meet with Chad yet, the one thing that consistently we have improved this year is our communication and some of our employee engagement numbers and our leadership numbers. Chris Gady has shared with us that our numbers are going up, where most of the country, the numbers are going down. So they were asking what we're doing in that. So I think by leaning our organization and having a more flat layering, it has allowed us to be more, have more contact with more of our organization and our middle level managers and our frontline staff. So I think we've changed our organization a little bit. So we're getting more communication across our organization, and it kind of showed where we're going. So I'm hoping that if we continue down this path, we're lightening the load by giving more accountability, but also the opportunities for more staff to get involved in things that they haven't been before. And that's professional development and growth.
And Joe lives here. And Ian's great, but he didn't live here. And David Keith didn't live here. So they needed those extra layers,
Yeah.
my suspicion, but Joe lives here. So he does all this stuff.
Can we take your ID and your passport and PSA will not let you through?
You'll have to do the work.
Okay,
So, sorry, to the chair, and again, thank you, because you succinctly said what I was gonna say, which is, that's part of the upcoming planning that we'll be looking at. Is how we can make sure that we're mitigating any of these potential issues that come forward. So, again, we know that the burden's heavy across the leadership board. And we want to make sure that we have good plans in place for people to, again, if I win the lottery or Chris or anyone, that we have people that are ready to plug into those holes so we can have that continuity of leadership.
We will share it with each other. We'll give everyone a little taste.
But the burden or the money?
The money, the lottery, the money.
Afraid you were gonna say.
We're gonna dip it in, Kim.
find me. Any more questions or comments about the,
That's all I ask for your millions.
any further questions?
I'll just make the comment that I feel much more comfortable after listening to you guys. So thank you for that.
Thanks for all, this was kind of a heavy lift. And as with all things that involve personnel, there's pushback and fear and anxiety and some agendas as you go through it. So I appreciate all the work that it took to get from the old structure to what we have now. Thank you.
Bye to the chair. I just would like to compliment Kim and Joe and Gail and Ian for starting this process and communicating it in a very methodical manner, so that everyone was brought in at the right times. I felt like it was handled really well, and so I'm really appreciative of my colleagues for doing that. It's really.
Do we have any new business doesn't look like it, but, all right. We've had lots of comments. Are there any further?
So search is, a very opaque system, but in terms of their planning, as an outsider that seems to be going forward, at the bottom of the hill, they have a procedure center, right? So it's not a complete standalone surgery center, but our head, Matthew Tainter, is our head of hospitalist, and he won't know. So he directly asked Dave Estola, who's a pediatrician from Sitka, who's now running that with Rose Lawhorn, who's our ex-CEO. And so they are sort of building it as they fly, is what I have heard. And so their plan is to do mostly cardiology. They're bringing a lot of cardiologists to town. And so my suspicion is that they'll try to do some of their OB there that they've got because they control that practice. I wouldn't be surprised if they then try to move into endoscopy, like, EGDs and colonoscopy and things like that. Urology, ENT procedures. Right now, they don't have those scheduled. Our worry is that they will do things down there and then we're responsible for the complications. That's why. So they're going slowly in terms of their, they've got all these buildings, including the building near the hospital or the airport that looks like the old rifle range. And that was physical therapy. Physical therapy has been moved into Vintage Park. They're sort of building out that Vintage Park with a big outpatient presence. And I think they're moving behavioral health and some of their addiction stuff into that space. And that's about all. And sooner or later, we may intersect with them, but right now we are completely separate spheres.
Any other comments on that sobering note?
Well, obviously there's a lot of work that went, even though I'm dragging on this meeting, that should have just lasted 30 minutes. But there's a lot of work. I just want to say I really appreciate the work that was done, especially on the organizational chart.
There's a lot going on. Well, any other questions for me? Now's your last chance on that. Okay, seeing none, the next meeting is scheduled for January 3rd. That work for folks? Now,
We may not be on the committee.
that's true, but you may be on the committee. So you just never know.
Yeah, that's fair. If I'm on the committee, that'd be fine.
Okay.
I don't know anything important.
All right, well, assuming that all the members remain the same, it sounds good. We'll let the new committee chairs, if there are any, change it if they need to. All right, thank you all. We are adjourned.
Okay, talk for your next meeting.
See you next week.
All right.
My next